Well, just yesterday we talked about how already there was going to be baked-in problems with Kemi Badenoch selecting the shadow cabinet, with future problems already, ready to roll. And it all comes down to, as I said in that video, it's policy. What policy does she pursue? The second she starts to nail down, this is what is going to be new Conservative policy, this is the direction we're going to go, there's going to be trouble. Massive trouble. We talked about who likely were going to be, in that video, who were going to be the troublemakers. Obviously, Priti Patel, Robert Jenrick. There's plenty of opportunities there, and that is more about a cabinet. Especially the vast majority of the cabinet picks will more loyalists over, well, competency. And we have seen this going all the way back to the Boris Johnson days, that if you pick entirely based on loyalty rather than, competence, well, guess what happens? And yes, they are, of course, now in opposition, but that still does not mean that they are not going to screw up, that they're still not going to sort of infight, that there is not this inevitability, because they know what they want. They know the policies they really want to do. It is very likely, as some people have said under my, another video that I made, very, very likely Badenoch may even feel emboldened by Donald Trump's victory to maybe even start matching potentially some of that rhetoric. It is very likely indeed. But we'll see what happens, of course, in the coming days. And obviously, when Trump wins, we'll see what happens. But again, it ain't going to be good. Oh, it ain't going to be good at all. But today we're going to talk about this on Conservative Home, because it did not take long for Will, our favorite T-boy over at the Conservative Home, to realize, actually, there are going to be significant problems in this cabinet. And are we teeing ourselves up? Because Will said himself not that too long ago that they would be doing this song and dance again in like a couple of months. Or at least give it a year or two. Give it a year or two first. But before we go on into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and of course the subscribe button. Down below there is the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can, buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button, and of course there is the Pony Club video down below as well. And of course, if you're on the Patreon, you can also get access to all the Pony Club videos as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. Even if you do, just click the like and share button. Let's crack on then into this. There may be trouble ahead. Oh, absolutely. Well, there will be. Definitely be trouble ahead. So Kemi Badenoch now has several tasks now in choosing her shadow cabinet. She had to reward her supporters' loyalty, bring the party back together by reaching out to rivals, and prepare to take the fight to Labour and reform, and make a clear change from Sunak, beginning the process now of serious truth-telling, as she heralded. On all those metrics, except the first, she has largely failed. Yeah, she has rewarded her supporters' loyalty, and everything else she has completely failed on. There has been no serious truth-telling. If Kemi Badenoch was actually serious about, spinning some truths to the Conservatives, why did she not do it at the Conservative leadership contest? Why did she not take that opportunity to do it then and have that conversation then? That would have been the perfect opportunity to have those conversations. But apparently not. So, as Will continues, loyalty has very clearly been rewarded. As Max Kendick has now pointed out, 11 of the 15 MPs who backed her at the contest start are now in the shadow cabinet. Only 6 out of the 24 backed a rival, sending Robert Jenrick to the shadow justice whilst only appointing 2 of his supporters, Ed Algar and Victoria Atkins. She has now shown that she does not believe he merits any special treatment. That will cause trouble in the future. Do not get me wrong. Jenrick has made it very, very clear. He has seen the opportunity, and what the Conservative membership wants is that new Brexit promise, that leave the European court, because hey, it's a whole part of this whole thing that they really don't like, but it's actually quite, popular in, you know, in the UK, the Human Rights Act, etc. All quite popular. And we've even talked before. We even covered it on here, where you had, Damien Green going, if you leave it, there are these consequences. And as we noted in those, most of those comments, no one actually talked about the consequences. They're all just like, no, 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 we should leave it, leave it. But what about the consequences? It's still not talked about. It's exactly like Brexit. Oh, you want to leave the European Union? Okay, what about the consequences? Consequences don't matter. Well, we're living with those consequences now. They clearly do. But back to this. So, of course, by not giving Substack star Neil O'Brien, who backed her, of course, in 2022, but then switched to Jarek this year, a shadow cabinet role, she put loyalty matters ahead of policy acumen, making Mel Stride the shadow cabinet, shadow chancellor, and Priti Patel shadow foreign secretary. The fifth and sixth place candidates must be then counted as a particular site to a rival who won only one fewer MP. Indeed. Why on earth, if you're bringing in rivals, you are bringing in people who lost, not Robert Jenrick, who you really should be bringing in closer, because you are signaling that he's going to cause trouble, and he's going to take every single opportunity to cause trouble in the future. That is a guarantee. Not only just on things like immigration, but the whole range of issues that the Tory party still has not resolved, still to this day, that are just going to be still bubbling away under the surface. And once again, we'll reach a boiling point and simmering point, and oh boy, will we be back to infighting and, press briefings against each other. So her inability to coax James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat to turn their services now infused a party unity bonhomie into the shadow cabinet participation leaves both stewing now behind her. Both seem very petulant. Having talked a good game about bringing the party together, they've now chosen to throw their toys out of their prams and refuse to serve just because they didn't get the top job. How childish. It's not that they want to get the top job. I think these two, both Cleverly and Tugendhat, are from a completely different wing to the party. And that wing that they are part of has basically said, headbangers are in charge again, let them fail. Let them fail. That's their view. Most of these Tory One Nation centrists have just turned around and said, right, let them fail again, and then hopefully, the people will vote someone sensible back in. But it's not, because of the membership. It's the membership that is also a prime problem. We've talked about the myriad problems of the party. The membership is certainly one. Who says they will, not vote someone sensible in next time? I don't think they will. It's very likely they might vote Jarek in next time. So, if, of course, the membership had hoped for a departure from Sunak, they would, of course, be very disappointed. Badenoch's transformation from now the insurgent to the establishment is now complete. All but three, Jarek Patel and Richard Fuller, were ministers in the outgoing government. Despite immigration having been central to the defeat, Badenoch has now opted for continuity at the Home Office with Chris Phillip. Yep. This isn't just immigration. It's a whole range of issues that they are not changing anything from Sunak. So did they actually learn anything from the defeat? No. It's very clear that they have learned nothing from the defeats. So, back to this. Undoubtedly appointing shadow ministers now with different departmental experience, like Philip Algar with health and Claire Cluthino regarding the shadow energy, does aid them in shadowing their Labour equivalents. But with 4 years and at least before the next election, plenty of time is at least available for new briefs to now be mastered. Continuity after a record defeat does seem unwise. Yeah, well, what are they going to do different about it? This is what You should see. I'm surprised no one has called Kimmy out on this. What exactly are you going to do different to Sunak? Because so far she has said nothing of any of this stuff. What are they going to do? You know. Patel's appointment is obviously very much a triumph for conservative Friends of Israel. Not appointing Tugendhat would have led to the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists to put the doomsday clock back half an hour. But we all remember what happened the last time she had a foreign affairs brief and the mess she made of controlling and reducing immigration as Home Secretary. She brings baggage, not gravitas. Yet she made a horrible mess. She made a horrible mess when she was Foreign Secretary. It was a massive diplomatic mess. She should never be allowed back into a front bench position ever again. Even a shadow cabinet, she should never have been allowed. Home Secretary, she was awful. She was terrible. She couldn't handle it. But now she's back on the front bench. She's in a position of power again. She's somehow managed to fail upwards in the most spectacular of ways. Anyway, similarly, of course, is Stride, the former chair of the Treasury Select Committee, and of course, a very confident media performer. Again, Will could not have written that with a straight face. Confident media performer. Yeah. He was not. He was not a confident media performer. I think we've all seen his him do the media rounds. He will, of course, do a very handy job of holding Reeves to account. I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. But his appointment does suggest neither now a likely reckoning with 14 years of stagnation of which we presided, or that Badenoch, as an economic vision, has actually of her own. Except the number of HR managers, of course, is too high. It's so funny because Will can tell instantly there are problems and that there are going to be huge issues still unresolved in the party. He knows this. He knows full well. Most of the people in the conservative media know full well they are going to be, dealing with huge internal problems, not really, taking on Labour or even Reform. There's going to end up into more infighting. And is Kemi Badenoch going to be able to handle that as leader? No, she's never shown once that she has any political acumen. Keeps on being compared to Margaret Thatcher for some reason. I don't know why, but she is. Margaret Thatcher had more political acumen in a small finger than Kemi Badenoch did, or at least does. She has never shown any leadership qualities. She's never shown that she's capable of making any big decisions. She's going to be a disaster. And at the first leadership challenge or hurdle, we'll see what happens. But she's going to fail at the first one. It's only a matter of time before she comes. And technically, this has almost been one. This first leadership challenge where you've really rewarded loyalty and appointed no competence whatsoever. That you've got now people. You've baked in sort of future rebellions, all kinds of stuff going on here. All kinds of stuff. And it's going to be a disaster. And a lot of people in the conservative circles are recognizing this, what a disaster this is going to end up being. But when it happens, it's going to be great to sit back and watch. It's going to be great to sit back and watch. So Cluthino, Atkins, of course, Jerricks will also have to get their teeth into their Labour equivalents, now presiding over rolling blackouts, angry farmers, and a revolving door, at least in prisons. Again, rolling blackouts. Expect Gareth Bacon, of course, to make a lot of noise about Euler's James cartilage to invoke the words 2.5% several million times, and of course Laura Trott will of course channel Emma Cameronite instincts to now into defending academics. By combining the Scotland and of course net zero briefs, Andrew Boyle has made enough the shadow minister, of course, for the North Sea. Janice Northman has also been comfortable enough for the House of Commons. Alan Markin has also enthusiasm for technology. So his department, of course, the shadow science does make sense. So does to Andrew Griffith to the shadow business after his private sector success. Yeah, Just because someone has had success in the private sector does not mean that they are going to be good when it comes to being a politician. Donald Trump springs to mind, but there you go. Yeah, it is not a shadow cabinet that, of course, endears huge enthusiasm, nor does Badenoch actually help in actually dressing out the existential threat to her leadership. Her eighth predecessor, since John Major to have lasted on average, is now 3.5 years. That almost certainly would not give her until the next election. Even with Bob Blackman's raised threshold, she is vulnerable and denied of MP support. Which is very true. Most MPs did not vote for her. How does she regain their support? Once again, all this talk of party unity, and, and how were they to achieve it? Nothing. But has she, of course, chosen to repeat the Liz Truss mistake, rewarding her allies whilst humiliating her rivals? Two-thirds of MPs voted for a candidate other than her in the final round. Four-fifths did not even do so in the first. Was it wise to so handsomely reward the long marchers whilst not finding top-table roles for her rivals? Supporters like Danny Kruger, Alicia Kearns, and even Nick Timothy. Potential tensions are obvious. With Jerrick at justice, how long can she avoid a row over the European Court of Human Rights or even the Human Rights Acts? What approach will Kevin Honrich take to now opposing Angela Rayner? That Labour are now going to go too far on planning reform or not far enough? Is Tugendhat and Cleverly now considering pastures new or waiting for her to beg them to come back? I don't think that will happen. I don't think she'll ever reach a point. But maybe Tugendhat and Cleverly, I would not be too surprised if we maybe see rebellions led by these two. I would not be too surprised if they become prominent rebellionistas in the coming years. So it is, of course, the shadow cabinet to break. Is this, of course, a shadow cabinet break from the last 14 years? That shows voters that we understand why we are so loathed. Is it a shadow cabinet that will be able to outflank Nigel Farage on immigration? Will it convince voters that we can be trusted with public services and living standards? That is not your father's Tory party. Or is it just more of the same and set to be punished accordingly? It is just more of the same. It really is. And the fact that Will is now asking that question finally maybe should stir some serious concern that his party really has not learned from that, massive loss. There has been no introspective look. And if Badenoch starts one, what does that mean for her own internal party unity then? When she says, well, actually, all these right-wing ideas and policies and ideology that we pursued led largely to our defeat and terrible record for the past 14 years. Maybe we need to completely change tack. What then happens when you've got a Tory party that is so ideologically, fixed to its point? She's not going to be able to handle it. Not going to be able to handle it at all. So, is Badenoch actually comfortable with what we might call a CDU strategy? Admitting a few failures of the previous government and rhetorically now committing to be a sounder and pitching towards the 32% of the vote, basking, of course, Labour's unpopularity, even when it leaves vast political space open to our ADF, a reform rampant across the Red Wall, picking up those 2019 voters we have now lost interest in. Well, you were never interested in those 2019 voters. You made that very clear. Boris Johnson and the rest of your party made that very clear. You never went and fulfilled the levelling up reform agenda that you had. You never fulfilled it. And guess what? A lot of those 2019 voters voted specifically for that levelling up agenda to be implemented, and it never was. Why then are they going to suddenly turn around and vote for you again after making very similar promises? They haven't even thought that far. So are we going to stagger, of course, to 2029 with Badenoch now making a few at least half-decent speeches about rewiring government, hoping that we can reunify a 2015 coalition of the Southern, better-off Lib Dem leaners frightened by 5 more years of Starmer? And again, I think the Lib Dems have radically changed. I think they learned a lot from that 2015 coalition. I think those people who were, quote, going to be terrified of 5 more years of Starmer, I don't think they will be. I think they'll be looking now at who can be a more effective opposition, and that will be the Lib Dems. Again, Will doesn't even consider this to be a potential idea, but he should be because it could potentially happen. It is more likely than I think Will is prepared to even think. Does that mean, either like it or not, we are now heading for a hung parliament, a coalition maybe with reform, and of course Farage in government? It is all, of course, a long way off. Once Badenoch has her feet on the table, she may actually unleash change that she promised. Skeptics, of course, in and outside Parliament may be, of course, won around. Voters may start to come back. Yeah, may start to come back for what? Uh, what is she going to do? What is she going to start offering? Victory, of course, over Labour may start to look inevitable. Again, it won't. The next election is 5 years away. It's still too early to be talking about. Or, of course, with egos bruised, rivals now unappeased, and the polls deteriorating, we'll be doing this all again in 2 years after she shares Truss's fate. We will be. 2 years' time, we'll be doing this all again, and it will be funny to watch. And what happens to Kemi Badenoch? How does she end up getting taken down? Is it just a mass MP rebellion? Do people quit? Does she have to face a vote of no confidence? Who knows? But we'll see what happens. Of course, Badenoch was dealt a very terrible hand, but it is, of course, up to her how she actually chooses to play it, who to promote, who areas to prioritize, the impression that she wants to convey to the electorate on the limited opportunities now presented to her. With a shadow cabinet, she has shown what and who actually matters to her. Time will tell if she has actually the wisdom of her choices and her priorities. Will already starting off with a very, very not a very good, because a lot of conservative commentators are really finding it hard to be enthused about this new cabinet. I mean, I'm still shocked that Priti Patel is there. I do not understand why you would have Priti Patel. It's insane. So let's see if we can see here. And they're all complaining about what Will said here. There's a lot of people who are saying here all of these comments are incredibly pro Badenoch, having a go at Will for briefing against the leader. But that's the situation they are now in. It's just such an awful leader. Like, what leadership capabilities has she shown? Like, you've already had, if you remember that dossier at the start of the contest that again was meant to be dropped by Jerick, you had the whole comments that were so obviously leaked by Kemi Badenoch after Sunak lost the election, and there was that first meeting where she laid into it, very obviously leaked by Kemi Badenoch to make her look good. How can you then trust that she's not going to throw other cabinet ministers on her own shadow cabinet ministers under the bus to make her look better? They've got some bad times, and the worse this gets for them, the worse people will start to think of them, and the worse their party goes. You've already seen, I posted yesterday the deterioration of just how many people have been voting in the Conservative leadership elections since David Cameron, and it's just gotten less and less and less and less. And this all bodes to the fact that the membership is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that right-wing bloc that they always used to appeal to is just getting smaller and smaller, while also now being chopped in half by Nigel Farage and the Reform UK. The party needs to fundamentally change in some spectacular ways. But once again, Kemi Badenoch's not going to do it. Kemi Badenoch is not going to do it. So, as always, thank you very much, of course, for watching. And, of course, we'll see you all next time.